Good morning. My name is David Pollack. I am Associate Executive Director of the JCRC and Chair of the Community Security Initiative. Today, we're going to go through the steps for applying for the Securing Communities Against Hate Crimes grants that are due January 7th, 2022. That's about 3.5 weeks away. So we have to get going. I'm sorry, this is going to be a long presentation. We're going to go through it fairly quickly, but these slides and all of the other materials are available at our websites, which include JCRC-NY.org/security grants, and also the JCRC-NY.org/consultants-corner. So both of those are, everything will be available to do that. The disclaimer, first of all, with the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, I've done that since 2005. And you know, we've been doing tutorials. We've been telling people how to do it. We see what works and what doesn't work. This is a grant that is now done at the Criminal Justice from the New York State Division of Criminal Justice. It's the first time I've seen this done. All of these recommendations are the best that we have. We urge you to read all the instructions and make your own judgments. Next slide. First of all, applications are due by noon on Friday, January 7th. That means if you get it in at 1 p.m., you're out of it. It probably will not work, will not accept your application. You can yell, beg, scream, cry. It's not going to work. They want to give out $25 million for 500 projects. Applications will be accepted for up to $50,000. If you have 3 separate facilities, you can put in 3 applications and totaling $150,000, but each application has to be separate. When I say facility, they define it as a building, including recreational areas adjacent to the building. And this grant will go for 2 years. That means, and we'll get to this later, you have to figure that you are going to install everything that you apply for and everything that's funded within 24 months from the signing of your contract. Next slide. So who's eligible? First of all, you're a 501c3, in other words, tax-exempt organization. Don't worry, we have, if you are a synagogue and you don't have an IRS exempt status determination letter, all you have to do is to put on your own stationery, you state that I am a house of worship and therefore do not need a recognition letter, and that is sufficient. You must be a nonprofit. You must be at risk of a hate crime due to your ideology, beliefs, or mission. We'll get to that. You must be registered or applied for exemption from the Attorney General's office at the Charities Bureau, and you must be pre-qualified. Next slide. So you're going to have to use 2 different apps for this. And remember, all of you who have done the Nonprofit Security Grant Program and you have an eGrants account, it's no good. You know, don't even think about it. You're going to need to pre-qualify through Grants Gateway. And there are 2 different ways that you can pre-qualify, either a full or a streamlined grant, a pre-qualification, excuse me. If you do the full version, which isn't that much more than the streamlined, you can use it if you want to apply for the, you will already be pre-qualified in the spring for the other grant, the Nonprofit Security Grant Program, the federal grant. And then you have to submit everything using the criminal justice grant management system. And so you have to download that. Next slide. And there's a manual that teaches you how to do it and how to get started. The information is all there. Next slide. Again, I said eligibility is if you, nonprofit organizations that have previously received a hate crimes grant, Securing Communities Against Hate Crimes grant, are not eligible for to apply for additional grants for the same facilities. But if you got a grant for one of your facilities and you have three, you can apply for the other two. And by the way, there's something embedded deep in the system that anyone who has never received a grant whatsoever gets 5 bonus points. If you're applying for a second and or a third, you do not get the 5 bonus points. The trick here is to get as close to 100 points as possible. If you've received the Nonprofit Security Grant Program grants, you may apply. It has nothing to do with this grant. Your eligibility example. Organization X operates a campus incorporating 3 separate facilities. Let's say a school, a daycare center, and a recreational, a daycare center and a community center. So you can apply, you already applied for the community center. You can't apply for that, but you can apply for the other 2. Next slide. Allowable equipment. It's basically the same sorts of equipment that I have been in the previous grants. You should note that external security vulnerabilities should be given a priority before requesting internal security projects under this grant program. Okay, so what can't you use? You can't do anything in a project that has been, that was previously funded through the hate crimes grant. There's a question of, if you want to update cameras that you put in 2 years ago, that's probably not going to, if you use a hate crimes grant to update cameras that you put in 2 years ago, they're going to say no. If you're going to, you have a system of 5 cameras and you want to add 5, that's fine. That's a new project. Everyone asks this question. If you are currently constructing a facility or plan to, you cannot apply for a grant for this. And if you don't use the building, occupy the building, you can't apply for a grant. You can't use this for security guards, and you can't use this to pay a grant writer. Before we get to vulnerability assessments, why don't we take some questions?
Okay, we have a few.
Let's kind of just do a roundup of eligibility, and then we'll go from there.
Correct. Okay, so first question. What is the New York State Attorney General's Office Charities Bureau exemption filing? Please advise. Thanks.
Jen, can you put in the chat on the security grants page on the left column a link to navigating your document vault? Essentially, if you are a yeshiva, if you are a house of worship, you apply for exemption. And it's a very quick form, 5 minutes, and you can submit it. If you are a community center, a non-religious facility, then you have to register with the State Attorney General. And there's some information on that on our website. And Jen will post the link.
So the next was a comment that was made, but David, maybe you can clarify and make sure that this is correct. It said, please note, usually grants are 24 months from start of the grant, not when contract is executed, as sometimes that takes a few full weeks for execution.
It will take more than a few weeks for execution. And at least in DSHES, it was 24 months from execution. But that will be very clear in your contract.
Okay, next question. If we once got funding through NSGP, but not through the Securing Communities Against Hate Crimes grant, do we still get the 5 points?
Yes, you do. This process ignores the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. Any awards there.
Okay, next question. What if a daycare operates in a synagogue, but is a different entity organization? Can both apply?
Yeah, as essentially, as long as you, the daycare is a separate corporation, has a lease, etc., it can apply for its own grant.
Okay, so that pretty much,
And it says somewhere in the fine print that you're responsible for coordinating with the landlord, the owner of the property, if you're making improvements on that property.
okay, and that pretty much answered the next question as well. What if our project is a camera system for a property that encompasses several buildings? How would we define facility in that case?
Well, it says adjacent recreational areas. So the camera system, you just attach it to one or more of the buildings. You could have the cameras clustered around building A in the building A grant, and then the ones around building B in the building B grant.
Okay, for organizations submitting up to 3 requests, is it important for the program details to be completely different, such as different vulnerabilities, equipment, people served, etc.? Or can similar needs, vulnerabilities be used for each of the 3 facilities?
Okay, so the threats are probably universal. So that if you're worried about an active threat, and the active threat could attack any of your 3 buildings, any one. So the threats are probably the same, and you can just copy and paste all 3 threats. The vulnerabilities are unique to the facility. We'll get into that. So you're going to have to, one facility might have a very strong door, the other 2 do not. So you have to make sure that you are responsive to the grant.
Okay, David, that was the last question for this section. If you still have questions and you think of something related to this question, this section, please put it in and we'll try to get to it as well. That's it for now, David.
Okay, now this grant has 14 questions. And if you do not reply to any one of the questions, that your grant will, application will not be considered. So there is a vulnerability self-assessment tool. Our team, and can see Seth Goodstein, who is the Queens Regional Manager, Terry Byrne, who is the Manhattan Staten Island Regional Manager, and Bill Hayes, who does Westchester and Bronx. We also have Adam Barish, who does Brooklyn, and Liron Filibi, who does Long Island. Our team does a really terrific job of doing assessments for you, which are the best way that you can figure out what you need and gives you a roadmap to make your facility safe and secure. This grant requires a self-assessment. And I'm going to go through how to do the self-assessment tool. You can submit an assessment that we do, that you have had someone else do. You can submit it. I don't know if anyone's going to look at it. You must do the self-assessment tool, and there's no 2 ways about it. Next. I forgot at the top of the show to thank Governor Hochul, Kathy Hochul, who really, when she took over, she got money out the door. People learned, almost 400 organizations learned that they were getting grants, and she put out the RFP for this grant. That's terrific. But what's happening, this grant is out there, and it's going to be very useful, but it's different. I also want to thank Charlene Cordero, who's Assistant Secretary for Public Safety, for all the work that she did getting this out. And Jake Adler, who is the Jewish liaison in the governor's office. Jake has been our go-to person. Now, in criminal justice services, they will require that you both fill in these answers in the GMS system under the questions tab, and prepare the responses in a separate document. It says very, very clearly, everything should be done in REL 11-point font at 1.5 line spacing. Do not ask me what's going to happen if you don't. I don't know. So, but I advise you to do it if you don't know how to use Microsoft Word well enough. You know, you can use Google Docs and save it in Microsoft Word format. That's fine. But you just do it in 11-point, 1.5 line spacing. Next slide. Remember I said there's 100 points to be had. There are some things you must do, but there are 0 points. So if you leave this blank, you're at risk of not having your application considered. So you just do it. You have to identify the type of facility for which you are seeking funding. In other words, I'm a nonprofit school, K through 6. That's fine. You have to put your mission statement. I have some examples of mission statements here. You have to provide a narrative to describe your organization that must include the size of membership. If you're a school, that means the number of students and the number of faculty, the number of people served, the community served, primary use of faculty, days and hours of operation, and peak occupancy. We'll get back to that later in the questions. And then you have to describe your organization's risk of a hate crime based on your ideology, beliefs, or missions. So your missions, let's go to the next slide. Your mission statement, you know, often I've seen lots and lots of mission statements. The mission statements are, you know, for a school, we are a Jewish school educating children, giving education for kindergarten to 6th grade, educating people in secular education and appropriate Jewish education according to the Orthodox tradition or the conservative tradition. Whatever it is, you just have to put something. And one of the important things is that you should, you know, say that you're, you know, if you are Jewish or you're Catholic, you should say it if that's your goal. Because here we have a sample that you can use and adapt. What's your general risk? Any institution that adheres to Jewish beliefs or whose mission is to support Jewish individuals, causes, and religious life is at heightened risk of being targeted in a hate crime. And then we give some examples, then we give hate crime statistics for the Jewish community. And next slide, here are the statistics as of the end of November from NYPD. Clearly, anyone in any organization that fits in any of these categories would be a potential target of a hate crime. Next slide. Okay, so now go to the self-assessment tool itself. Next. And by the way, the links are live and you can get it. This requires you to identify the threat. Remember, out of 100 points, clearly identify the perceived threat to the facility. If you do nothing on the form, you'll get no points. If you merely check off the right box, you'll get some points. If you clearly identify, you'll get 10 points. Clearly identify the vulnerabilities, and you have to show how the vulnerabilities relate to the threat. Again, answer every question. Next slide. You select all threats that apply to your facility. This may include threats that your facility has not experienced but is susceptible to, or threats that your facility has already experienced. And then it says if your facility has firsthand experience with any of the listed threats, please describe it in the comments box. So here what I did is I checked everything because we believe that every threat is germane to a Jewish institution. I just put, again, they want to know what happened to your institution. Our Jewish Community Center received a bomb threat in 2017. We had a swastika drawn on our building in 2019. Just list whatever happened. What I didn't do is to add any sorts of threats received through social media. We had anti-Semitic information placed on our Facebook page. All of those are germane, and you should put into the comments. Vulnerabilities. And people always mix these up. Vulnerabilities are the problems that you have in your building, are elements of your building that would allow an evildoer to do evil. First there's going to be general questions, then they'll deal with perimeter, surveillance, and training. They want comments to clearly identify the vulnerabilities of the facility. Okay, so they ask a question. They say your facility has invested in security already. For example, your comments are, yes, we have unmet needs. You can go further and say we have too few cameras, no access control, etc. Just put in the comments. It doesn't give you room to write a book. The facility security committee has been established. Oh, I didn't do it. So I put in, well, it's a good idea. We'll work on that. Suspicious activities reported to appropriate authorities. Well, we tell everyone if you see something, say something, and everyone knows they have to say something to the executive director, who relays anything to the local precinct. So you want to give examples. Again, access control. I gave some examples. We have a security guard for access control. We have a security guard, but we need a swipe card access system. Put in those comments. If you don't have a vulnerability, and a vulnerability that can be mitigated by a camera, they're going to say, why are you asking for cameras? And, if we had more time, I would say that, a lot of people think that cameras solve your security problems. They don't, but they can solve some problems. They ask about internal and external doors have functioning locks. Hey, that's good. But, put in a comment that the door is no good. The door is weak and can be easily kicked in. So even though it says that functioning, it talks about functioning locks, the lock, could be strong, but the weakest point is the door itself, and people can get in. So these are examples. Again, evacuation routes are posted next to all doors. No, that's a good idea. I'm going to work on it. This really helps you with best practice and is also an educational tool. Anti-ramming, for example, there's something on anti-vehicle bollards have been implemented or considered. Yes, we considered them, but they're too expensive. Yes, we put in bicycle racks, but we found out that those are not sufficient as anti-vehicle ramming. You can say grounds and parking lots are fenced in where appropriate. You can say fencing is old and rusted, needs to be replaced. The gate does not function. The parking lot gate is regularly open and unlocked, and that would justify an electronic access gate. Again, the next section, surveillance and emergency response capacities. It says, oh, well, we have phone trees. The answer might be a response is no. We use a WhatsApp group, or we have an emergency notification system. So we don't need a phone tree. And this gives us a connected community. Our PA system does not function properly. We don't have a PA system. PA systems are acceptable items under this grant. Our CCTV systems are aging and do not provide clear images. You have to go through the items, and these comments will justify your expenditures. Our CCTV systems do not have analytic capabilities. It should be. Images are recorded so that they can be used for investigation after the fact, but we're not notified of suspicious events in real time. So I was just working with a synagogue on Long Island last night, and I explained, well, what happens if someone approaches your building? If they're just walking by on the sidewalk, you don't want anyone to be bothered. But if someone actually approaches your building at 2 a.m., do you want a text message to be sent to a key person with a visual? CCTV systems with analytics can do that for you. That's what we recommend. For security, for training and awareness, our facility does not have a written active threat plan, and our staff is not trained. Any of these things warrant expenditures. Those are vulnerabilities that you should be looking for. Now, you're going to have to link vulnerabilities to threats. And again, this is 10 points in itself, and you have to be sure to link each vulnerability to a threat. So you use the provided threat list that we went through before, and you try to look at the threats, improvised explosives. What allows your building to be vulnerable to improvised explosives? Well, windows that are not properly protected allow improvised explosives, someone to put a knapsack next to a window. If it explodes, the glass becomes the weapon and can slice people, who are in a classroom adjacent to them. All of this is there. So they want to know what your hate crime history is, which means that you have to list it, and hopefully police reports, insurance documentation, media, etc., all will work. And this is 0 to 3 points. So if that means that you haven't actually had a hate crime at your facility, that means that you can only get a total of 97 points. You can't get 100, but that's fine. You can make it up in other places. And remember to attach the requested documentation and attach press reports. Your location, this is question 7. And, remember, there is a opportunity to answer this question in Microsoft Word document, question 7. And then you also put it in the GMS under the questions. So does the location of the facility contribute to the risk of a hate crime incident? If so, please describe. Well, are you on a major street? Well, that contributes because people see you. Are you on a corner? Same thing. You're visible. Does your architecture make you distinctive as compared to the neighborhood properties? Is there a concentration of buildings in the area that are targets of hate crimes? So, if you have in this, immediately adjacent to one another, synagogues or schools or both, that's something that would be location-based. On the other end of the scale, is you're building an anomaly. Are you the only synagogue or the only church in the area? That would also make you a target. And have there been other hate crimes in your area? Okay, so let's stop there and take questions dealing with this before we get to risk assessment.
All right, David, we have a lot of questions. First one, if we have just received the NSGP grant, can we use prior NSGP security assessment document for the hate crimes assessment?
You can submit it, but you must submit the self-assessment. You have to go through this no matter what.
So the next question actually was, I think, piggybacking on that. From that particular slide, points 2 and 3 of the vulnerability assessment slides seem to contradict each other, which is saying that you need to do the self-assessment tool And we're suggesting you submit, if you have the separate threat vulnerability assessment that was done, as well as an attachment.
Our experience with Homeland Security, our being community security initiative, is that, you know, the reaction from the people, the powers that be at Homeland Security was, we love your assessments. They give us a great idea of what's going on in the building. They wanted our assessments. They said, can you do more next year? This agency wants its instrument. So you have to do both.
And a lot of those questions were pertaining to that. So just for clarification, these are two separate documents. One is the template from the state in the link that's in the RFP, and the other is the separate document which you've had done for the facility. Is that correct, David?
Right. This self-assessment tool is something you have to submit as an attachment.
Okay, next question. Does the organization need to be occupying the facility on January 7th when the grant is submitted? If the organization is moving in between January 7th and June 1st, can they apply for the grant?
It says occupied at the time. I don't know if anyone is going to check this. The wording is occupied at the time of submission.
Next question. For those organizations not in the New York City vicinity, such as upstate New York, who provides a professional threat vulnerability assessment for these organizations?
You don't need it for this grant, but number one, for camps upstate, Jonathan Lacey is on this call. Jonathan Lacey is the SCAN camps advisor, and he can help you with assessments. And also Department of Homeland Security Division CISA also has protective security advisors that can supply assessments. And if you send something to us, we'll send you an email on how to get in touch with them.
Okay, next question. If we are a cemetery owned by the synagogue, do we identify as a house of worship or other?
If you are a cemetery, either you are operating as a cemetery corporation, which is not 501c3, and that's something that's very important to ascertain, or you're operating under the synagogue articles of incorporation, and this is highly technical and highly specific. If you are, then you can apply through the synagogue.
Okay, so next question. Questions 1 to 10 are narrative questions, and I understand should be in the Word document. But questions 11 to 14 are budget type questions. Should the budget also be?
We'll get there.
Word
You're reading ahead.
Okay, so we'll move back to budget.
We haven't got, we're only up to question 6.
There will be a PDF, the PowerPoint presentation will be posted to the Consultants Corner website. So if anybody wasn't on it or you need to access these slides, it is there on the link that was provided, and we'll provide it again. Is peak occupancy, how many people are allowed to be in the building space as per lawful code?
That's a lawful code, and I'm not answering that. What they want, and they want to know the demographics of your building. In other words, you know, we generally have 200 people a week come to services. It's not a lawful code issue, it's how many people are using it. There are lots and lots of buildings with, you know, very large capacities that only get a few people a week. And we'll get to that question.
Is it frowned upon, or will you lose points if you copy and paste an example? Does it have to be unique to each applicant? In other words, if one of the posted examples you listed in these slides work for our institution, is it okay to copy and paste?
Go for it. As long as it's, you know, it's accurate, you can use it. I specifically used examples that I knew existed, you know, in the real world.
Do the threats need to have been documented with a police report?
If you have a police report, it's better, and you're going to get more points. If you don't, you'll get some points. everything has points attached. 0, if nothing's ever happened to you, that's 0 points. If you have an example of a threat on social media and you reported it to the police, that's a maximum kind of issue. If you have a threat in social media and you have a screenshot, it's going to be good, but you won't get as many points. By the way, I'm guessing at this because I have, as opposed to the Homeland Security grants, I haven't seen the judge's score sheet, but I assume when they're asking for examples and they're assigning points to something, there's a correlation between what they ask for and how they're going to score it.
Our facility experienced threats, vandalism, trespassing, etc., but with no proof that there were hate crimes due to our Jewish affiliation. Any advice with these?
That's not a problem whatsoever. You list these. As long as you can document that it's good and you put it in there. You don't have to prove that someone did vandalism because they were Jewish. All you have to do is to prove that there was vandalism.
Okay, next question. Please clarify. Can a professional assessment be submitted instead of the self-assessment tool, or must we submit the self-assessment tool and could also submit the professional assessment? If we can choose one or the other, do you have advice with regard which is preferable?
We have been advised that the self-assessment tool is required and anything else you submit is nice. I don't know if the professional assessment will ever be looked at.
Where can we find the FEMA standards for bollards and blast-resistant film?
What I'd advise you to do is to contact your regional security manager. Just send us an email, and Jen is putting up everyone's email addresses. Thank you, Jen.
If we say that we don't have any training plan, but we don't include training as one of our requests for funds, does DCJS look down on this?
I'm not sure. What you can do, again, our regional security managers will help you with training at no cost. That's a great service that we provide. And you can answer that we're going to ask CSI for help on training. That's a solution. If you ignore it completely, I don't know if there's a way that they evaluate that you're not mitigating important vulnerabilities.
Okay, next question. Where are we putting the description in the vulnerability self-assessment?
There is a self-assessment tool. The link is on the website.
Also, in terms of the Word document submission, which component of this application is done in Word? How much of the GMS should be done in Word?
You are required for questions 1 through 14, which is all of the above, to be done in the GMS, to be done in Word, on the Word document. And by the way, question 5 is the self-assessment tool. You have to do that there.
Okay, next question. If you are just a synagogue eligible for this grant, we are not a community center and do not have a school or a daycare center. So they're asking if it's just a synagogue, are they eligible?
At any 501c3, that includes synagogues, churches, all kinds of organizations, charitable organizations are eligible for this grant.
Okay, next question was, if we're applying for multiple locations up to 3, can we use the same supplemental threat vulnerability assessment for all 3?
Each facility needs a separate self-assessment tool, but the supplemental that you can use for all 3.
Okay, what if you are a nonprofit hospital that has an interfaith chapel and community rooms, where the local police precinct also holds their community affairs meetings? Do you check off other? Please explain. Excuse me. So essentially, I guess they're asking, can they apply for a nonprofit hospital under this grant because they have an interfaith chapel?
No, it doesn't matter. The hospital, if you're a 501c3, hospitals can be 501c3s. The threshold question is, are they a 501c3?
If you were doing all 3 applications, do you need 3 separate self-assessments for each facility or recreation space?
You need a separate self-assessment for each facility. One for one. Facility A, self-assessment A. Facility B, self-assessment B. You need a total application for all 3. Okay,
there's one additional question. I'm just trying to clarify it. Still confused about how to answer question 5 in GMS. Do we just write see attachment, or do we put it in the narrative that correlates?
What I would do is to copy, do a snapshot of these different, just like I did in the assessment, in the presentation. Just do a copy of what you wrote and put it in the Word document. There's no definitive way of doing all of this.
All right, that was the last one for now, David.
Okay, so let's go on to vulnerabilities. Okay, the question is, describe how the proposed facility hardening equipment will mitigate the threats and vulnerabilities. And this is up to 15 points. So this is really important. Now, number one, I know I confused one of the people on our team that I said you have to use binomial expansion. But, this is not, I'm not even going to get into that there. You have to, go threat by threat, then each threat and which vulnerabilities apply to the threat. So here, I like charts because they make things really clear. Active shooter is a threat. Many of the existing doors are old and could easily be breached, allowing an attacker to enter the premises. The mitigation, replace the existing primary and secondary entrances with doors that can sustain an attack by a determined intruder and thus preventing an attack. So, that's an example. Graffiti. Graffiti is a threat. Current cameras are old and in ill repair. Vandals can approach the building by taking advantage of blind spots in our system. Replace the functioning cameras with high resolution models with analytics allowing for real-time notification. Homemade explosives. Current window glass is unprotected. A bomb could be placed next to the window and the glass itself would become a weapon, resulting in severe injury for all of the occupants. So the mitigation, cover the existing windows with properly anchored blast mitigation film to prevent both injury from explosives and unauthorized entry. In other words, people can't just break the glass on a window and climb in. Again, straight-edged weapons and knives. Well, a vulnerability, as our facility does not have a run, hide, fight plan. By the way, the vulnerability for an active shooter and a straight-edge weapons can be the same. If someone can get in with a gun or someone can get in with a knife, it doesn't matter. You don't want an evildoer getting in. But run, hide, fight plan works for an active shooter and for a knife. So that's what I mean. You have to cover every threat and every vulnerability. We don't have a run, hide, fight plan, and in the event of an attack, our occupants will not be able to better protect themselves. You want to engage a consultant to write a plan for all active threats, to train our people, and to supervise exercises and drills. Vehicle ramming. The sidewalk in front of our school is open and a vehicle could mount the sidewalk and kill or injure everyone there. So you want to properly install rated anti-ramming measures so that our building and pedestrians are protected. Again, you can reach out to the regional security managers in your area to try to figure out what's the mitigation for X? We know we have this problem. What's the mitigation? And they'll help you answer that. This goes to other attendance measures. What is the number of events at the facility per year? For a school, it's probably 200 school days plus 25 evening programs, whatever it is. What is the largest event attendance at your facility? What is the average daily population at the facility? What they are basically doing here is looking at, they're going to give 15 points to large facilities that are used quite often. So, I can, tell you that if there's a school with 2,000 students that's used every day, plus Shabbos, etc., that's going to get the 15 points. Again, they don't tell us, if your school has 35 people you're going to get more than 0 points, but I don't know how close you get to 5. And what they may do is to just average everyone and, set everyone up. And, I'm this quantitative person. The way I would do it is look at, what is the facility with the least number of daily population and what's with the greatest, divide the whole set into 5 and give 1 point for the lowest quintile, 5 points for the highest. But, I don't know how they're going to do it. My best advice to you is do your best and try to figure it out. Just answer accurately. The risk assessment demographics for the downstaters, all of the, for county population and for hate crimes incidents, all of New York City, Long Island, Westchester, and Rockland are all 5 points apiece. So you get 10 points here. People who are further upstate, will get fewer points. This is something that is beyond your control, and you're not required to complete or submit anything for question 10. You're just going to get it. And so in your Microsoft document, just put in question 10. We are not required to submit anything. Go on to question 11, which we're going to do right now. Okay, this is the budget, and this is the question that we have. You have to do a budget and work plan that's worth 25 points. Remember that there are non-permissible costs. So if you put in for a non-permissible cost, you're going to get zapped. It's a rerun slide. Okay, so what they're doing is looking at the budget detail. You have to, basically, this tells you how to do a consultant and things like that, and allowable costs. Okay, you get this on page 38 of the request for proposal. I'm going through step by step in the budget detail. List positions by title. This is personnel services and fringe benefits. You can't do it, it's unallowable. You just skip this. Next, security training costs. So what you're doing is allows costs to train security personnel and appropriate staff. So to bring a trainer in or to send people for training. And by the way, preferably in New York State, so that, I've gone for training. DHS has sent me for training in Washington, D.C. That way, that kind of training would be approved because it was by DHS. But out-of-state travel must be requested in writing and approved in advance in writing. But you can pay for a trainer, and you can pay for training materials and travel-related costs to attend training. Consultant services. So, essentially, let's go to the next slide just for a second. This is to be determined by competitive bid. So the name of the consultant. So you fill in to be determined by competitive bid. You don't know the name of the consultant. If you put it in, they're going to zap it. Service provided, let's say run, hide, fight. Do training tabletop. The computation, it's estimated that this element will take 3 consulting days. And it says that the maximum of $650 a consulting day. So it costs $1,850. So that's how you fill this in. Next, our organization will consult with other organizations to find consultants' experience. It says how you're going to find the consultant. In addition, we'll advertise and solicit competitive bids. We anticipate the grant will cover the fees paid to the consultant and travel and meal costs. Next, for equipment. So here I kind of filled it in. Let's say that, exterior CCTV cameras, you need 6 of them. The item cost is $2,500 per. So that ends up to be $15,000. And then you have to list included equipment and explain how the equipment is necessary for the success of the project. Describe the procurement method to be used. I goofed here. We'll update it in a minute, after this, because we will expand the existing camera system. Upgraded cameras will be installed to monitor the perimeter. Exterior cameras should be between 8 and 15 megapixels. Have analytic capability, blah, blah, blah. And then what I didn't do here is to say, because you have to read this carefully, and I slipped here, describe the procurement method to be used. And the procurement method to be used is going to be, we're going to use open bids according to the New York State procurement guidelines. You should add that, include that, because it asks here. I have a recorder switcher, have a little bit of more information, and again, describe the procurement method to be used. I did not read close enough. So you can lose points here if you don't add this stuff in. Next, repeat for every category of equipment in the project. Supplies. Supplies are expendables. In this line of work, we don't have a lot of expendables, but let's say that you have an access control system and you have swipe cards or photo IDs with barcodes, and you have to buy blanks. So, to get 500 printable RFID key cards, and the total cost is $1,000. You explain why it's needed for the success of the program, and I don't think that says you have to say how you're going to get it. And indicate who will be using the expendable materials. So that, our security department will issue the cards. Travel and sustenance, this is pretty straightforward. Okay, so that ends the budget section. Just in terms of project completion, that's how many points? 0 to 5 points. So given the 2-year performance of the grant, how are you going to finish on time? And, a word to the wise, there've been a lot of concerns upstate that people with the previous hate crimes grants did not finish their grants over the 2-year period. So if you've completed grants, say, hey, we had a nonprofit security grant program and we completed it within the 3-year period. You can talk about the experience of your project manager. You can talk about that you have board members who do real estate management, accounting, law, engineering, who can help push the project forward. And also that you're in contact with us, and we will be providing ongoing support, including development of bid specifications. Those are the kind of services our regional security manager team can really help out on. But you have to justify. You have to say, I'm going to complete it in the time period. I'm not sure that they're going to go and check. I doubt that they're going to go and check to see if you had to request extensions. You have to do a work plan. There is a appendix that's on page 40, request for proposal. You have to cut and paste that into your Microsoft Word document. And it should be entered as written for the application. There's a space for you to put in the name of your organization. And then you just entered as written. That's their instruction. If your organization receives an award, the work plan can be adjusted as part of the contract development process to meet the needs of your project. So essentially that's a cut and paste job, but you have to do it. It's no points, but it's a question. So if you don't do it, you can be eliminated. The sexual harassment law. Now, this is confusing. because I'm not sure you have to attach this to your application, but you may have to. Essentially, you need every employer in New York State has to have a motto policy. JCRC has links. Our general counsel, Marcia Eisenberg, has a great page on this. She has links in an employer toolkit, and you have to do some training. And it says all applicants to this RFP must complete the certification provided at the website down here, and submit the completed certification as attachment to the application in GMS. It's a requirement, but we'll get. Let's go to the next slide, please. There's a bonus question. Remember, way back in the beginning, I said, has your organization previously received a hate crimes grant from DSHES? Include a statement that responds yes or no. So that goes in your Microsoft Word document. It's probably in the GMS too. You get 5 points if you answer no. Scoring and evaluation. We've been going through that. Let's go on. Let's talk about Tier 1 evaluation. Was it received by January 7th at noon? Yes or no? No. These are minimum pass-fail. No, you fail. Are you eligible? Pass-fail. Are you pre-qualified by either method? Pass-fail. So these are the 3 Tier 1 evaluation issues. Next. Okay, now, did you answer questions 1 to 14? Both in the question tab and attach a Word copy. Again, pass-fail. Did you provide the required budget detail and justifications in the budget tab? See page 38 of the RFP. Did you paste a standardized work plan into the work plan of the GMS? Okay. Did you include a completed vulnerability assessment? That means a self-assessment and another one, not or. They want a ground level photo of the front facade of your facility. They want a status history report from Grants Gateway. They want your sexual harassment prevention policy training certificate. If you use the streamlined pre-qualification process, you must upload your IRS determination letter or the statement that we talked about. If you use the full pre-qualification process, then this document is already in your document vault. And you have to do a substitute W-9 form as an attachment. Now that was done. I have a link to that on our website. Now, once you pass all of those hurdles, now they're looking to give you 100 points. And you must attain a minimum of 70 points to be eligible for funding. My guess is that Governor Hochul wants to give out the entire $25 million. Not enough people score 70. They're going to go back and at its discretion request additional information from an applicant as deemed necessary. Will they fill in some blanks? I'm not sure. I can't tell you that, but that might happen. And in the event of a tie score among applicants and where both applicants can't be selected, the applicant with the highest risk score will be given priority. So that's the most important. Okay, so final award decisions will be made by Criminal Justice Services in accordance with the best interests of the state. I don't know what that means. And here's how they make the decisions. There are the funds available. Here's the application checklist again. Before you submit your package, page 28, there's a best practice guide for security. That is, what you can use to come up with your vulnerabilities and your mitigation. You want to make sure you've completed all of the required applications and attached all of the required documents. You want to review and evaluate the scoring criteria. Pay attention to the ones that are most important. You know, risk is the most important section. You should do that really, really well. And share your draft with a colleague to ensure that the application is clearly written, complete, and addresses all objectives of the grant opportunity. Application is different. It clearly, you know, takes longer to complete than any other, any of the Homeland Security packages. You're better off. I feel that we're better off using the traditional pre-qualification process because that includes, you know, your 501c3 status and the Attorney General's submission to the Charities Bureau. Remember, January 7th at noon, Homeland Security did it at 5 p.m., but this is at noon, no exceptions. Send any questions to CSI questions@JCRC-NY.org, and we'll get back to you. We have no access to the GMS application. We can't help you. If something's not working on your computer, we cannot help you. You have to contact GMS. Here's their phone number and their email. Again, Seth tried this last week and he got an answer in a couple of hours, but as January 7th approaches, it's going to be more than a couple of hours. So again, get started today. Seth, there were lots and lots of questions trying to distract me.
Questions. A lot of occupancy questions. So what is the difference between peak occupancy in question 3 and what is the average daily population of the facility in question 9? So the difference between peak and average daily.
Okay. So, synagogue, Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre, and Yahrzeit represents peak occupancy. So we get 1,000 people Yom Kippur Yahrzeit, but every week we get 200 average. Is that clear? So we have, you know, in the school, well, all the parents come for the school play. So we have 1,000 people, but usually we have 500 students. So that's the difference.
Okay, next question. Is each daily service a separate event for the synagogue?
Put it in there. List it. Absolutely.
Okay, next question. We are able to check off all of the threats. So do we note all of them in question 8 and state that, for example, CCTV and blast-proof film will mitigate those threats?
Okay. So this is a little bit more complicated. So, you know, you go for each threat. You know, what you did is you looked at, you know, threats and vulnerabilities. So threat is graffiti. What kinds of things allow for are vulnerabilities that allow for graffiti? Well, you don't have fences, you don't have lighting, you don't have cameras. Anything else? You know, our team, what am I missing? Those are all vulnerabilities that should be listed for graffiti.
Okay, next question. We are a synagogue which rents space to a nursery school, unaffiliated with the synagogue. Can we count the nursery school attendance towards average daily population?
As long as the nursery school is not applying for its independent grant, yes.
Okay. With COVID, we are holding hybrid events or Zoom only events. Do we need to show current attendance or can we use pre-COVID attendance?
Just make it very clear that what you're doing. Use pre-COVID attendance and you hope to get back to that level as soon as possible.
Okay, next question. Will reviewers be looking for institutional matching resource funding?
That's never happened. And there's no slot to put that in.
Okay, next question. Do you have examples for the budget detail worksheet and narrative? Also, can we copy and paste examples if they are truly applicable, or will they notice your example was pasted and deduct points in that our answer wasn't unique?
I can't tell you what they're going to do because they're not communicating with anyone at this point. And I would say you're fine using our examples. And we don't have a budget detail. If you have a question on the cost of anything, call your regional security manager, email it to CSI questions, and we'll get it to the right person.
What do I link each vulnerability to a threat?
What you do is it's in the risk assessment. I don't remember which question. I think it was something like 10 or 11. And I like to do a chart that you can paste it right into your Microsoft Word, but make sure that it's 11.1 and half spacing. Yeah, REL type.
Okay, next question. So we are only filling out the budget form in GMS, no attachments, correct?
It's you should you can use. I would have to look if you can if it's a live document, you can cut and paste it into Word.
Okay, and the second part of that question, also, if you only have equipment, no need to worry about other items of the budget?
Correct.
Okay. Where can we find the New York State procurement process for bidding, and when is it a bid, request for quote, request for proposals, etc.? I think that's getting a little ahead of this.
You're getting way ahead of the game. We can send it to you if you need it, but essentially you're going to just know that it's a process. This is not free money. It's free money with strings, and you're going to have to make very specific bids, use a very specific open bid process.
Okay, next question. Are there any issues if our budget will consist of just material costs and not the installation? For example, we have staff that can install the fence and cameras. So can we list the material costs under the equipment costs, and this way avoid any need to send anything out for bid? It's also getting a little bit ahead also.
You're getting ahead of yourself. You're going to have to purchase the materials. So, you need to bid on the materials.
Okay, next question was also relative to bid specs for cameras. Please contact.
And by the way, you cannot charge for the cost of your for your own staff. So, you might as well have a contractor do it. And just remember that this spring, I can't tell you when, but this spring you're going to have there's going to be a nonprofit security grant, another round of nonprofit security grant funding, and that will be probably $150,000 per facility. So, figure that this is the first bite at making your facility more secure, but you'll be able to do more later.
Okay, the next question was also relative to bid specs for cameras. We ask that you please contact your regional security manager directly with the emails provided, and they can assist you further. Next question. Should we also include the work plan in the Word document as an attachment?
You must.
Okay, next question. If your organization itself got a hate crimes grant, but the facility that we are now applying for did not get a hate crimes grant, do we get the 5 points?
Again, there's no clarity on this. My assumption is if your corporation received a grant, this is an additional facility, so you're eligible, but you don't get the 5 points. I mean, the governor wants to make the money available to newbies, people who have never received grants. So there are, the disqualifications and eligibility are only because they're making it easier for new people to get in.
Okay, so the next question. The comments in the vulnerability self-assessment tool are very limited. Is it supposed to be like that, or is something wrong on my end?
If you fill it in, it looks like you can do 50 to 75 words when I was playing with it. But at some point it cuts off.
Okay, so then the next question, what is the sexual harassment prevention policy training certificate?
You have to follow the links and go in. Technically, every employer of a certain size must have staff do sexual harassment training. And they have to watch a video on a video and find out, what they should not be doing. If you remember, we don't have a governor. We had a change in governor this year because things were alleged that were not kosher according to sexual harassment policies. So in any event, you have to do it depending on your employee size, the number of employees. If you're under the number of employees, you can say we have only three employees and are not required to file.
Okay, next question. If you're not doing Streamline, do you still need to submit a substitute W-9?
It says you do. So there's no penalty for submitting the same thing twice. As a matter of fact, they seem to encourage it.
Okay, if we are requesting only equipment, is it required as a budget attachment?
You have to do, there's an equipment set. You have to do the section on equipment, the sections on personnel and training and all other kinds of things. You can just skip, does not apply.
So the next question, just another sexual harassment certificate question regarding certifying a written policy and that you do training. The question was, do they need to submit the actual policy along with the signed certificate?
You have to look on the website. And we'll make that a little bit clear. We'll check it out too.
And this is the last question. If you apply and win this grant, will you be able to apply for the nonprofit Homeland Security grant?
Correct. So, plan on this is, do the most important things right now. And remember that this grant, they anticipate telling you that you will receive a grant on or about March 27th. And I would say that you could start accessing money sometime after July 1st.
Okay, we just got
that's a guess.
Just got one more question that just came in. We applied for the NSGP for our rabbi's home, a property owned by the synagogue. It was not approved. Can we use this hate crimes grant for that purpose? The capacity is only 5 members in the household. With COVID, there are no currently larger gatherings, but in the past there were. Okay.
This is where the demographics are going to play a part. So you are certainly eligible to apply to cover the rabbi's home, the parsonage, but you're only protecting 5 people. You're not protecting 1,000. So you might get 1 point rather than 5 points in the different categories. Or maybe, the top capacity is 20 people come over for dinner. So you'll be getting a total of 4 or 5 points out of the 20. So you're going to lose points there.
Yeah, that was the last question, David.
Okay. So I guess sorry for going so fast. We're working on. We will be updating the tutorial as we go along, and Robin asked, "Where's the RFP?" We have copies on our website, links to the RFP, and we thank you for putting up with me for an hour and a half. And our team is going to be there to answer questions. Thanks a lot.